At my son's wedding, they placed a garbage can where my chair should have been. It was just a prank, they said. Don't cry about it. My new daughter-in-law laughed. All the guests thought it was hilarious. But when I showed everyone the DNA papers about my grandson, nobody was laughing anymore. The lying woman had to face the truth. Let me tell you everything. First, let me thank you for watching. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout-out in our next video. Today's special shout-out goes to Regina Davis from Chicago, Illinois. Thank you for being part of our family. Now, let me tell you everything. I should have known something bad was coming when I got to the church and couldn't find my name anywhere on the guest list. I looked everywhere for my name, Adams Baker Carter, but no Betty Williams was on the paper. My heart started beating fast. I walked up to a young lady with a clipboard. Her smile was bright and fake. Excuse me, honey. I can't find where I'm sitting. I'm Betty Williams, mother of the groom. Her happy face changed quickly. Oh my. Let me ask the bride about that. She ran away fast, leaving me standing there in my pretty purple dress. I had bought this dress just for Tommy's special day. I spent 3 whole months getting ready, buying clothes, and feeling excited. Now, I felt like nobody wanted me at my own son's wedding. When the girl came back, she brought Samantha with her. Samantha looked beautiful in her white wedding dress. Her red hair was all curled up fancy. Probably cost more money than I spend on food all month. She was only 24 years old, but acted like she owned the whole world. She never had to work hard for anything in her life. Oh, Betty, Samantha said in a sweet voice that didn't sound real. Her blue eyes looked mean, though. Sorry about the mix-up. We had to change some seats at the last minute. That's okay, dear. Where should I sit? I asked nicely. Samantha's smile got bigger and scarier. Follow me. I'll show you your special place. My heart felt happy for a second. A special place sounded nice. Maybe she was trying to be kind after all. We hadn't gotten along very well since Tommy brought her home last year, but maybe she wanted to make things better on her wedding day. I followed her through the pretty church hall. There were white flowers everywhere and gold ribbons. Soon Tommy would dance with his new wife in this room. We walked past all the nice tables with fancy chairs. We passed the tables for family members. We kept walking and walking. Where are we going exactly? I asked. My voice sounded worried now. Just a little bit more, Samantha said. Her high heels made loud sounds on the floor. I wanted you to see everything perfectly. We went around a corner and she stopped. Here we are, she said happily. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Against the wall next to the coat closet was one old folding chair. Right beside it sat a big silver trash can. I don't understand, I whispered. My voice was so quiet I could barely hear it myself. Samantha laughed like she had told the funniest joke ever. This is your seat, right next to the garbage can. Isn't it perfect? My stomach felt sick. This can't be real, I said. Oh, but it is real, she said. Her sweet voice was gone now and it sounded mean. Don't be so dramatic, Betty. It's just a little joke. Her voice had changed completely. She only talked this way when Tommy wasn't around to hear her. Besides, I think it fits you perfectly, don't you? My face got hot with shame. But something else was happening, too. I was starting to understand that this wasn't an accident or even a mean prank. This was planned. She wanted to hurt me on purpose. Samantha, please, I said. This is your wedding day. Surely we can what? She interrupted me. Her mask was completely off now. Pretend that you belong here? Pretend that anybody actually wants you here? Her words hit me like someone had punched me. I grabbed the back of the folding chair so I wouldn't fall down. Does Tommy know about this? I asked with my shaking voice. Her smile came back, but now it looked evil. Tommy thinks it's hilarious. We both do. You should see how funny your face looks right now. Just then, my son appeared around the corner. He looked so handsome in his black suit. My heart felt better for just 1 second. Surely he would fix this. Surely he would tell his new wife that this had gone too far. Mom, did Samantha show you where you're sitting? Tommy asked with a big smile. For just a moment, I thought he was going to save me from this embarrassment. Pretty funny, right? He said, still smiling. The whole world felt like it was spinning around me. My own son, the boy I raised all by myself after his daddy left us, the child I worked 2 jobs for so he could go to college, was laughing at me being hurt. Tommy, I said very carefully, you can't think this is okay. He just shrugged and put his arm around Samantha's waist. Come on, Mom, don't be so sensitive. It's just a joke. You're always so serious about everything." Behind them, other wedding guests were starting to notice what was happening. I could hear people whispering and pointing at me. Some were laughing too. My cheeks burned with shame as I realized everyone was staring at me. "See?" Samantha said loud enough for everyone to hear. "She can't take a joke." No wonder Tommy wanted to get away from all that negativity. More laughter came from the small crowd watching us. I felt so embarrassed in a way I hadn't felt since I was a little girl. These people, Tommy's friends, Samantha's family, people from work, they were all watching me be treated badly, and they thought it was entertaining. I looked at my son one more time, hoping to see some kindness in his eyes. But he was looking at Samantha with so much love that I knew I had already lost him. "Well," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I guess I should thank you both for showing me exactly how you feel." I sat down in the folding chair with as much dignity as I could manage. The metal was cold and uncomfortable, and the garbage can next to me smelled like old food from the party before the wedding. But I would not let them see me run away crying. As the crowd left, some still giggling about the mother-in-law who couldn't take a joke, I sat there in my purple dress and watched my son's wedding from behind a coat closet. Every laugh from the main party felt like a knife in my heart. But as I sat there, something else started growing along with the pain, a quiet, angry feeling. And under that anger, a worried feeling that had been bothering me for months. Something about Samantha's pregnancy that never made sense. If they wanted to treat me like garbage, maybe it was time I started paying attention to exactly what kind of family I was being pushed away from. Sitting in that folding chair for 3 whole hours, listening to the celebration I wasn't really part of, gave me lots of time to think. And the more I thought, the more strange memories started coming back to me. It was exactly 1 year ago when Tommy first brought Samantha to meet me. I remembered the exact date because it was my birthday, and I had hoped for a quiet dinner with just my son. Instead, he showed up with this beautiful young woman who immediately started changing everything. The conversation, where we sat, even the food I had cooked for us. "Tommy's told me so many wonderful things about you," she had said that night, but her smile never looked real to me. "I hope we can be close." Within just 6 weeks of that first meeting, they were engaged to be married. Within 3 months, she said she was having a baby. Everything happened so fast. But Tommy was so happy and so in love that I pushed my worries away. Young love, I told myself. Sometimes these things happen quickly. But now, watching my son look adoringly at his new wife while I sat next to a trash can, all those worried thoughts came flooding back with crystal clarity. The baby, little Jake, had been born exactly 8 months after Tommy and Samantha's first meeting. 8 months. They said he was born early, but Jake weighed 8 pounds. That's not small for a baby born too soon. When I gently asked about this, Samantha got very angry. "Are you saying I'm lying about my own pregnancy?" She snapped at me. "Some babies grow faster than others. Maybe if you had more children, you would understand these things better." That comment hurt so much because it was my biggest sadness. I had wanted more children after Tommy, but his father left when Tommy was only 3 years old. I never found anyone good enough to bring into our small, careful world. Samantha was very good at finding these sore spots and pressing on them to hurt me more. From my uncomfortable seat, I watched the baby being passed around among Samantha's family members. Jake was a beautiful child with black hair and serious green eyes that seemed to notice everything around him. He was 10 months old now and just starting to pull himself up on furniture. He made cute baby sounds that made everyone smile. But those eyes bothered me. Not because anything was wrong with them, but because they looked nothing like Tommy's brown eyes or Samantha's blue ones. Looking around at all the wedding guests, I couldn't find anyone with Jake's special green eyes and sharp face features. I shook my head, trying to stop thinking such thoughts. Babies can look different from their parents sometimes, especially when they're still small, I told myself. I was letting my hurt feelings make me think crazy things. But then I remembered another conversation from just 4 months ago. I had stopped by their apartment without calling first. I needed to drop off some mail that came to my house by mistake, and I hoped to see Jake, who seemed to change every week. When I knocked on the door, I could hear Samantha on the phone inside. Her voice sounded angry and upset, "You need to stay away," she was saying loudly. "I've told you 1,000,000 times. It's over. I'm married now, and that's final." When she opened the door, her face was red, and she looked shaken up. Her usual calm look was gone. "Betty, what are you doing here?" she asked, sounding annoyed. "Just bringing your mail," I said, holding up the envelope. "Is everything okay?" "You seem upset." "Just a telemarketer," she said quickly, but her hands were shaking as she took the mail from me. "You know how annoying they can be. I wanted to ask about Jake and spend some time with my grandson, but Samantha made it clear I wasn't welcome." "Actually, this isn't a good time," she said, already closing the door. "Jake is sleeping, and I have important phone calls to make." Looking back now, that phone conversation didn't sound like a telemarketer at all. It sounded personal and private, like someone who had been in a relationship with Samantha before she met Tommy, or maybe even during her time with Tommy. Another memory came back to me, this one from right after Jake was born. I was at the hospital holding my supposed grandson for the first time. A nurse made a comment that stuck with me. "He has such strong features for a newborn," she said. "Usually it takes a few months for babies to show their real personality in their faces, but this little guy knows exactly who he is." At the time, I thought it was a compliment. Now, I wondered if she was trying to tell me something else completely. The wedding reception was almost over now. They had cut the cake, thrown the bouquet, and done the first dance. Tommy looked happier than I had ever seen him, spinning Samantha around the dance floor while everyone clapped and cheered. They really seemed to be in love. At least Tommy was. But love can make people blind to the truth. I learned that lesson the hard way with Tommy's father, who was charming and sweet right up until the day he emptied our bank account and ran away with his secretary. As I finally stood up to leave, my legs stiff from sitting in that awful chair for so long, I made a decision. If Samantha wanted to treat me like trash, if she wanted to convince my son that I was nothing more than an unwanted burden, then maybe it was time I started acting like someone with nothing left to lose. I walked over to where Jake was sleeping peacefully in his baby carrier, surrounded by gifts and flowers. His tiny face was relaxed in sleep, but even unconscious. Those distinctive green eyes and angular jawline seemed to tell a story that had nothing to do with my brown-eyed, round-faced son. "Beautiful baby," I said loud enough for Samantha to hear from across the room, where she was accepting congratulations from guests. "He's going to be quite the heartbreaker when he grows up." Samantha's head turned toward me fast, her eyes getting narrow and mean. For just one moment, I saw fear flash across her face before she got control of herself again. Very interesting. I leaned down and gently touched Jake's tiny hand. Such a sweet, innocent child, caught up in whatever web of lies the adults around him had created. He deserved better than that. More importantly, so did Tommy. As I walked toward the exit, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because my embarrassment was over. I was still leaving a wedding where I had been treated like garbage. But because I finally had a purpose. A direction for all the anger and hurt that had been building inside me. I was going to find out the truth about Jake. Not for revenge, though. I couldn't deny that the thought of wiping that smug smile off Samantha's face was very appealing. I was going to do it because my son deserved to know who he had really married and what kind of family he was trying to build. If I was right about my suspicions, this beautiful wedding was built on a foundation of lies. And if I was wrong, well, at least I would know for sure. And maybe I could find a way to make peace with a family that didn't seem to want me anymore. Either way, it was time to stop being the woman who sat quietly next to the garbage can and start being the mother who protected her child, even when he didn't want to be protected. 4 days after the wedding, I sat in my small kitchen, looking through the phone book for private investigators. My hands shook a little as I turned through the pages. The idea felt so strange and dramatic that I almost closed the book several times. But every time I hesitated, I remembered that folding chair, that garbage can, and the way my own son had laughed at my pain. The first investigator I called sounded like he only worked on cheating husbands and insurance problems. The second one hung up when I mentioned wanting to investigate my daughter-in-law. It wasn't until I reached David Martinez, a former police officer who now had his own small business, that I found someone who understood. Family situations are tricky, he said during our phone call. But if there are questions about who the father really is, especially when children are involved, those answers deserve to be found. Can you meet me tomorrow? David's office was in a simple strip mall between a hair salon and a sandwich shop. He was a tall, friendly man in his 40s with kind eyes and gray hair. He listened without judging me as I explained my suspicions, writing notes in careful handwriting. The timeline is definitely questionable. He agreed, after I had told him everything I could remember. 8 months from meeting to birth, claiming the baby came early but with full-term weight. And you said the baby doesn't look like either supposed parent. Not at all, I said. But I know babies can look different from their parents sometimes. I could be completely wrong about this. David smiled gently. That's what DNA testing is for. But I want you to understand what we're talking about here. If your suspicions are correct, proving it will destroy your son's marriage and possibly his relationship with you forever. Are you prepared for that possibility? I thought about Tommy's face at the wedding. The way he had looked at me with such casual dismissal. Our relationship is already destroyed. At least this way, if I'm right, he'll know the truth. And if I'm wrong, then I'll know I'm wrong. And maybe I can find a way to make peace with reality. David nodded. Fair enough. For a basic DNA test, I'll need samples from the child and from your son for comparison. The child's sample is usually easier to get. A pacifier, a bottle, anything he's put in his mouth recently. Your son's sample could be more challenging. My heart sank. I barely see Jake anymore. Samantha makes sure of that. And Tommy, I trailed off, realizing how completely I had been cut out of their lives. Let me do some background investigation first, David suggested. Look into Samantha's past. See what I can find about her life before she met your son. Sometimes the truth reveals itself in unexpected ways. Over the next week, I found myself living in a strange state of waiting. I went through my daily routines, work at the grocery store where I had been employed for 15 years, shopping, evening walks around my neighborhood. But my mind was constantly elsewhere, wondering what David might be discovering. The call came on a Tuesday evening as I was making scrambled eggs for dinner. Betty, it's David. I found some very interesting information about Samantha's background. Can you come in tomorrow afternoon? I barely slept that night, my imagination running wild with possibilities. When I arrived at David's office the next day, he had a thick folder full of papers spread across his desk. Samantha wasn't completely honest about her past, David began without wasting time. She told your son she had lived in Denver before moving here, working as a receptionist for a doctor's office that closed down. That part is true, but there's more to the story. He slid a photograph across the desk. It showed Samantha at what looked like a casual backyard barbecue, smiling and laughing with a group of people. In the photo, her arm was wrapped around a tall, dark-haired man with serious green eyes and angular features that made my stomach drop with recognition. His name is Marcus Thompson, David continued. They dated for almost 3 years in Denver. According to several mutual friends I spoke with, the relationship was very serious. They lived together for the last year before she suddenly left town. I picked up the photograph with trembling hands. The resemblance between Marcus and little Jake was unmistakable. The same green eyes, the same distinctive jawline, even the same slightly crooked smile. When did she leave Denver? I asked, though I was already afraid of the answer. About 2 months before she met your son, according to her former landlord. She broke her lease unexpectedly and left no forwarding address. She claimed she had a job opportunity she couldn't pass up. The timeline was devastating. If Samantha had been living with Marcus until 2 months before meeting Tommy, and if Jake was born 8 months later. There's more, David said gently. I spoke with Marcus. He's been trying to find Samantha for almost 2 years now. He believes she was pregnant when she left Denver. My scrambled eggs from the night before threatened to come back up. He knows about Jake? Not specifically, but he knows she was pregnant with his child when she disappeared. He's been searching for her ever since. I stared at the photograph of this stranger who might be my grandson's real father. He looked like a good man, someone who had been searching for his child and the woman he loved. What kind of person does this? I whispered. David's expression was understanding but firm. Someone who's very good at starting over when things become inconvenient. This Marcus fellow has a good job and a stable life, but apparently, Samantha decided she could do better. The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. Samantha had left Denver pregnant with Marcus's child, found my successful, trusting son, and convinced him the baby was his. She had found herself a better situation and had been willing to lie to everyone, including an innocent baby, to keep it. "I need to get that DNA sample," I said, my voice stronger than I had heard it in weeks. "Are you sure? Once we have proof, there's no going back." I thought about Jake, innocent and trusting, believing Tommy was his father. I thought about Tommy pouring his love into a child who wasn't his, while some stranger in Denver grieved for a son he had never met. And I thought about myself sitting next to that garbage can while Samantha laughed at the family she was destroying with her lies. "I'm sure." David nodded. "Then we need to be very careful about how we proceed. If Samantha suspects what we're doing, she could disappear again, taking Jake with her. She's done it before." That afternoon, I drove past Tommy and Samantha's apartment building, trying to work up the courage to knock on their door. I had brought a small gift for Jake, a stuffed bear I had picked up at the toy store, hoping it might give me a few minutes alone with him. But as I sat in my car watching their building, I realized I was terrified, not of Samantha's hostility, which I had grown used to, but of what I might discover. What if the DNA test confirmed my suspicions? What if it didn't? Either way, after today, nothing would ever be the same. I was still sitting there, frozen by fear, when Samantha came out of the building, pushing Jake in his stroller. She was dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, her red hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, looking like any other young mother out for an afternoon walk. But I knew better now. I knew about Marcus Thompson in Denver and the elaborate lie she had built around my family. As I watched her stop to chat with a neighbor, laughing and gesturing while Jake babbled happily in his stroller, I felt a cold anger settle into my bones. She was good at this, good at pretending, good at making people believe whatever version of reality served her purposes. But she had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated the woman she had tried to throw away like garbage. I started my car and drove home, my mind already working on a plan. David was right. We needed to be careful, but careful didn't mean passive. It was time to stop being the victim in Samantha's story and start being the author of my own. The opportunity came sooner than I had expected. On Saturday afternoon, Tommy called with an invitation that surprised me so much I almost didn't believe it. "Mom, would you like to come over for lunch today?" Samantha thought it might be nice to have a family meal together. I gripped the phone tighter, immediately suspicious. After the wedding embarrassment, the idea of Samantha suddenly wanting my company seemed impossible. "Are you sure that's what she wants?" "Of course," he said. "We've been talking, and we both feel bad about how things went at the wedding. The whole seating thing. It was supposed to be funny, but maybe it went too far." "Maybe it went too far," I repeated. "It was cruel and hurtful. Just maybe too far," he said. But I swallowed my pride. This might be my only chance to get the DNA sample David needed. That's very thoughtful. What time should I come over? 1 hour. And Mom, could you maybe bring some of those chocolate chip cookies you used to make? The ones with the pecans. It was such a normal request, so much like the son I had raised, that for a moment I almost forgot about DNA tests and Marcus Thompson and all the complicated lies that had brought us to this point. "Of course, honey. I'll make them fresh this morning." I spent the next few hours in my kitchen mixing cookie dough and trying to calm my nerves. The chocolate chip cookies were Tommy's favorite, something I had made for every special occasion throughout his childhood. They required patience and care, but they had always been my way of showing love when words felt hard to say. As I dropped spoonfuls of dough onto baking sheets, I thought about what David had told me to look for. Any item the baby has put in his mouth recently. A pacifier, a toy, even a spoon if he's eating solid foods. Just slip it into a plastic bag when no one's looking. It sounded so simple, so clinical, but the reality of deceiving my own family, even a family that had deceived me first, made my stomach churn with guilt. At exactly 1, I stood outside Tommy's apartment door, holding a plate of warm cookies and trying to project the image of a grateful mother-in-law, happy to be included. When Samantha opened the door, her smile seemed real enough, though I noticed it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Betty, Come in. Something smells amazing. The apartment was spotless as always, decorated in shades of blue and white that looked expensive, but felt cold to me. Jake was in his high chair in the kitchen, banging a red plastic spoon against the tray, while Samantha finished preparing what appeared to be a fancy lunch. "Can I help with anything?" I asked, setting my plate on the counter. "Just keep Jake entertained while I get everything ready." I approached my supposed grandson carefully, still amazed by how little he resembled either Tommy or Samantha. Up close, the resemblance to Marcus Thompson was even more obvious. Jake looked up at me with those serious green eyes and gave me a gummy smile that made my heart ache. "Hi there, sweetie," I said softly, reaching out to touch his chubby hand. He grabbed my finger immediately, his grip surprisingly strong for a 10-month-old. "He likes you," Tommy said, appearing in the kitchen doorway. "Look at that smile." For a moment, watching my son beam at what he believed was his child's affection for his mother, I almost lost my nerve. How could I destroy this beautiful picture? Even if it was built on lies, Tommy was genuinely happy. Jake was loved and cared for. Was the truth worth breaking all of that? But then I remembered Marcus Thompson somewhere in Denver, not knowing if his child was alive or dead. I thought about Tommy building his life around a lie that could explode at any moment. And I thought about myself, treated like garbage, because I was the only threat to Samantha's carefully built fiction. The truth mattered. It always mattered. Lunch was surprisingly pleasant. Samantha seemed to be making a real effort to include me in the conversation, asking about my work at the grocery store, and even complimenting my chocolate chip cookies. Tommy was relaxed and happy, telling stories about their plans and making arrangements for Jake's first birthday party. "We're thinking of having it at the community center," Samantha said, spooning mashed bananas into Jake's mouth. "A cartoon theme, maybe. Very kid-friendly." "That sounds wonderful," I replied, watching as Jake grabbed the spoon and immediately put it in his mouth, covering it with bananas and baby drool. "Perfect. Can I help feed him?" "Sure," she said, handing me the spoon. "He's actually getting pretty good at eating by himself. Sometimes he wants to do it all alone." For the next 10 minutes, I fed Jake while chatting with Tommy about work and weekend plans. The baby was adorably messy, getting food everywhere, including all over the spoon. When he finally lost interest and started pushing the food away, I stood up to rinse the spoon in the sink. "Let me get that," Samantha said, reaching for it. "It's fine. I've got it," I replied, already turning toward the sink. In one smooth motion, I rinsed the spoon and slipped it into the plastic bag I had hidden in my purse, replacing it with a clean spoon from the dish rack. The whole thing took less than 30 seconds. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of forced normalcy. We looked at photos from their honeymoon, discussed plans for the holidays, and I held Jake while he napped against my shoulder. Throughout it all, I felt the weight of that plastic bag in my purse containing what might be the key to destroying everything. When I finally left, Samantha walked me to the door while Tommy cleaned up the kitchen. "Thank you for coming today," she said, and for a moment her voice sounded almost sincere. "I know things have been difficult between us, but we're family now, and I want Jake to have a relationship with his grandmother." His grandmother. The words hit me like a punch, but I managed to keep my face calm. "I want that too." She studied my face for a long moment, and I worried that somehow she could see through me, could sense the deception I was carrying. But then she smiled again and gave me an awkward hug. "Drive safely, and thank you again for the cookies. Tommy's been talking about them for weeks." The next morning, I met David at a laboratory across town. The technician, a cheerful man named Robert, explained the process while I tried not to think about what I was doing. "We'll compare the DNA from this sample with a sample from the alleged father," he said, carefully labeling the bag containing Jake's spoon. "Results usually take 4 to 6 business days. And what exactly will those results tell us? If there's a biological relationship, we'll know with 99.9% accuracy. If there isn't, we'll know that too." 4 to 6 business days seemed like both forever and no time at all. David must have seen the worry on my face. "Are you having second thoughts?" I thought about Jake's smile, about Tommy's happiness, about the way Samantha had hugged me goodbye. Then I thought about Marcus Thompson still searching for his child after 2 years. No, I said firmly. I need to know. The waiting was torture. Every day felt like a week. Every phone call made my heart race, thinking it might be the results. I went through the motions of my normal routine, but my mind was constantly elsewhere, imagining different scenarios, different outcomes. Finally, on Thursday afternoon, David called. "Betty, the results are in. Can you come to my office?" My hands were shaking so badly I could barely drive. When I walked into David's office, he was sitting behind his desk with a manila envelope in front of him. His expression was serious. "Before I show you these," he said, "I want you to know that whatever these results say, you've done the right thing by seeking the truth." I nodded, not trusting my voice. He opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "The DNA test shows no biological relationship between the baby and your son. Jake is not Tommy's child." Even though I had expected it, even though I had been virtually certain, hearing the words spoken out loud felt like being hit by a truck. I sank into the chair across from David's desk. My legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. "Are you absolutely certain?" 99.9% certain. The lab ran the test twice to be sure. David's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm sorry, Betty. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear." That was the strange thing. Part of me was relieved. Not happy, certainly not victorious, but relieved to finally know the truth. "What happens now?" I asked. "That's up to you. You could confront Samantha privately. Give her a chance to come clean to your son herself. You could tell Tommy directly. Or, given how they've treated you, you could choose to reveal this information publicly at a time and place of your choosing." I thought about that folding chair, that garbage can, the laughter of wedding guests who found my pain entertaining. I thought about Marcus Thompson, who had the right to know his child. And I thought about Tommy living a lie that was bound to explode eventually. "I need some time to think about this," I said. But even as I said it, I was already beginning to form a plan. Samantha had chosen the time and place for my humiliation. Maybe it was time I returned the favor. The truth had been revealed. Now I had to decide what to do with it. For 3 weeks after receiving the DNA results, I carried the truth like a heavy stone in my chest. Every conversation with Tommy felt like acting in a play. Every smile was fake. Every casual question about Jake was loaded with secret knowledge that threatened to spill out at any moment. The opportunity I had been waiting for came in the form of another invitation. This one even more surprising than the lunch. Samantha called me herself on a Monday evening, her voice bright and cheerful. "Betty, I have a wonderful idea. What would you think about hosting a little party for Jake's first birthday? I thought it would be nice to have both families together for such a special milestone." My grip tightened on the phone. "Both families?" "Well, my parents are flying in from Phoenix this weekend, and my brother's coming too. I thought it would be perfect timing for everyone to meet everyone, a real family celebration." The irony was almost too much to bear. Samantha wanted to parade her perfect little family in front of her relatives with me playing the role of the grateful grandmother-in-law. She had no idea she was about to hand me the perfect stage for the performance of my lifetime. "That sounds lovely," I managed. "What can I bring?" "Just yourself. Oh, and maybe some of those chocolate chip cookies again. My parents absolutely loved them when I told them about lunch the other day." Friday afternoon arrived sunny and warm, opposite to my dark mood as I drove to Tommy's apartment complex. In my purse, carefully tucked into a manila envelope, were copies of the DNA test results and David's investigation report, including the photograph of Marcus Thompson. I had also printed out the contact information David had found for Marcus, though I wasn't sure yet if I would need it. The apartment was already crowded when I arrived. Samantha's parents, Frank and Linda Carter, were a well-dressed couple in their 50s, who clearly had money and weren't shy about showing it. Linda wore a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and Frank's cologne was so strong I could smell it from across the room. Samantha's brother, Kevin, was a younger version of their father, tall, confident, and loud. He was currently holding Jake, making funny faces while the baby giggled and reached for his glasses. "You must be Betty," Linda said, approaching me with a smile that was polite but cold. "We've heard so much about you." I wondered exactly what they had heard, given that Samantha had seated me next to a garbage can at the wedding. "It's wonderful to meet you all. Thank you for including me in this celebration. Of course, Frank said, though his handshake was quick and dismissive. Family is family. If only he knew how ironic that statement was about to become. For the first hour, I played my part perfectly. I admired Linda's stories about their recent vacation to Europe, laughed at Frank's jokes about his golf game, and listened to Kevin's complaints about his job in sales. The whole time I kept one eye on Jake, who was being passed around like a beloved little prince. He was walking confidently now, toddling from person to person with determination and joy. Tommy was in his element, the proud father recording every moment with his phone, calling out encouragement to the baby he believed was his son. The sight of it made my heart break, but I pushed the emotion aside. This had to be done. Should we sing Happy Birthday now? Samantha suggested as we finished the cake. I want to get some good photos of Jake with his candle. We all gathered around the high chair where Jake sat, a paper crown on his head and frosting smeared across his face. The atmosphere was warm and joyful, everyone ready to celebrate this milestone moment. Before we sing, I said, standing up slowly, I think this is the perfect time to share something I've been wanting to discuss with the whole family. The room fell quiet, all eyes turning to me. Samantha's smile disappeared completely, perhaps sensing something dangerous in my tone. What is it, Mom? Tommy asked, still holding his phone, ready to record. I reached into my purse and pulled out the manila envelope, my hands steadier than I had expected them to be. I've recently learned some information that I think everyone needs to know. Especially you, Tommy. Samantha's face went white as paper. Betty, what are you doing? I'm telling the truth, I said simply. Something I probably should have done weeks ago. I opened the envelope and pulled out the DNA test results, holding them up so everyone could see the official laboratory letterhead. 3 weeks ago, I had a DNA test performed on Jake. The silence in the room was deafening. Tommy's face went through a series of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and then something that might have been understanding. Mom, why would you? He started. Because I suspected what these results have now confirmed, I interrupted. Jake is not your biological son. The explosion of voices was immediate. Linda gasped loudly. Frank muttered something angry under his breath. And Kevin's mouth fell open in shock, but it was Samantha's reaction that I focused on, the way her face crumpled, then hardened, then crumpled again as she realized her carefully built world was falling apart. That's impossible, she said, but her voice had no strength. How dare you? The test shows zero biological relationship between Tommy and Jake, I continued, my voice cutting through the chaos, which led me to do some additional investigation. I pulled out the photograph of Marcus Thompson and handed it to Tommy. His face went completely white as he stared at the image, then looked at Jake, then back at the photograph. Who is this? He whispered. His name is Marcus Thompson, I said. He's a graphic designer from Denver who's been searching for Samantha and his son for the past 2 years. Samantha finally found her voice, and when she spoke, it was with the fury of someone who had been trapped. You had no right. How dare you spy on my family, interfere in my marriage? Your marriage. I laughed. And there was no joy in it. Your marriage that's based on a lie. Your family that you built by deceiving my son about the paternity of a child that isn't his. Stop it, Tommy said quietly, still staring at the photograph. Just everybody stop. The room fell silent again. Jake, sensing the tension, had started to whimper in his high chair. My son looked at the baby, really looked at him, and I saw the moment when everything clicked into place. The green eyes, the angular features, the complete lack of resemblance to anyone in our family. How long have you known? He asked Samantha, his voice barely audible. Samantha opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Tommy, I can explain. How long? He repeated. Since before I met you, she whispered. I was pregnant when I left Denver. Marcus wanted to get married, but I couldn't see myself stuck in that life forever. When I met you, you were so successful, so kind, and when you fell in love with me, you let me believe the baby was yours. Tommy's voice was hollow, emotionless. You were so happy about it, Samantha said desperately. You talked about how you'd always wanted to be a father. How Jake was the best thing that had ever happened to you. I couldn't take that away from you, so you lied to me. For over a year you let me believe." He stopped, looking down at Jake, who was reaching for his face with tiny, innocent hands. "Does he know, Marcus? Does he know he has a son?" "He suspected," I said when Samantha didn't answer. "My investigator spoke with him. He's been looking for you both." The room erupted again, but this time it was Samantha's family in chaos. Linda was demanding explanations. Frank was asking pointed questions about legal implications, and Kevin was staring at his sister like he had never seen her before. Through it all, Tommy sat quietly, holding Jake and processing the destruction of everything he had believed about his life. Finally, he looked up at me. "You could have told me privately," he said. "Why did you do it like this? I thought about that folding chair, about the garbage can, about all the times Samantha had made me feel small and unwanted." "Because she's done this before, Tommy," I said. "She's very good at manipulating situations to her advantage, at making people believe whatever serves her purposes. I wanted witnesses. I wanted there to be no doubt about what was said and what was proven." He nodded slowly, then stood up and handed Jake to me. "I need some fresh air." As Tommy walked out onto the balcony, Samantha turned to face me, her beautiful face twisted with rage and desperation. "You've destroyed everything," she hissed. "Are you happy now? You've ruined my marriage, my family." "No," I said firmly, settling Jake against my shoulder as he began to cry. "You destroyed it the moment you decided to build it on lies. I just revealed the truth." Looking around the room at the shocked faces of Samantha's family, at the chaos and confusion my revelation had created, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph or satisfaction, but a deep, profound sadness for all the pain that could have been avoided if one person had simply chosen honesty over convenience. But along with the sadness came something else, a sense of lightness I hadn't felt in months. The truth was out now. Whatever happened next, we could at least build it on a foundation of reality instead of lies. For months later, I stood in my kitchen making chocolate chip cookies, not because anyone had asked for them, but because the familiar ritual of mixing dough had become my way of thinking, my way of processing everything that had changed since that Friday afternoon when the truth finally came to light. The immediate aftermath had been as chaotic as I had expected. Samantha's parents had left that very evening, Linda barely speaking to her daughter as they packed their bags. Kevin had stayed longer, trying to convince Samantha to fix this somehow. But even he seemed shaken by the size of her lies. Tommy had filed for divorce within a week, citing fraud. The legal process was surprisingly straightforward when you had DNA evidence and documentation of deliberate deception about paternity. Samantha had initially fought it, but her lawyer had apparently explained that her position was hopeless. The hardest part, as I had known it would be, was watching Tommy say goodbye to Jake. Despite everything, despite knowing the truth, he had spent over a year believing he was that child's father. Love doesn't disappear just because biology proves it was misplaced. He had told me during one of our weekly dinners, a new tradition we had established after the chaos. I keep thinking I should be angry at him. He's the living proof of how completely I was fooled. But when I look at him, I see an innocent baby who didn't choose any of this. I finished for him. Exactly. Marcus Thompson had arrived from Denver within 3 weeks of my revelation. I had expected to dislike him, this stranger who had complicated our lives by simply existing. But he had turned out to be exactly what David's investigation had suggested, a decent man who had been searching for his child and the woman he loved. The meeting between Marcus and Tommy had been awkward but respectful, too, men who had been unwitting victims of the same deception, trying to figure out how to navigate an impossible situation with dignity. "I need you to know," Marcus had said during that first meeting. "I never knew she was pregnant when she left. If I had known, I would have moved heaven and earth to find her." Tommy had nodded stiffly. "What are your plans now?" "I want to be part of my son's life. I want to support him financially, emotionally, however I can. But I also understand that you've been his father for the past year. I don't want to just tear him away from everything he knows." It was more consideration than Samantha had ever shown anyone. The custody arrangement they had eventually worked out was complicated, but fair. Marcus would take primary custody, moving to our city to be closer to Jake and to make the transition easier. Tommy would have regular visitation rights until Jake was old enough to understand the situation, at which point they would revisit the arrangement. Samantha had fought the custody decision bitterly, but her position was weak. She had committed fraud. She had no stable income of her own, and she had demonstrated a pattern of deception that judges tend to take seriously in custody cases. The last I had heard, she had moved back to Phoenix to live with her parents, pending the outcome of various legal proceedings. Frank and Linda had apparently been less forgiving of their daughter's behavior than I might have expected from people who had initially seemed so protective of her. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, Tommy was coming for dinner, and for the first time in over a year, it was just going to be the two of us. No Samantha monitoring our conversation, no tension about whether I was welcome in my own son's life, no walking on eggshells around topics that might upset the delicate balance of lies. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 a.m. Something's never changed, I thought. Tommy had always been on time. "Something smells incredible," he said as I opened the door, and for a moment he was just my son again, the boy who had never met a chocolate chip cookie he didn't love. "They're almost ready," I said, stepping aside to let him in. "How was your week?" It was such a normal question, the kind of thing I had longed to ask him for months without feeling like I was intruding on his carefully constructed life. "Actually, pretty good," he said, settling into his old spot at my kitchen table. "I had coffee with Marcus and Jake yesterday." I paused in pulling the cookies from the oven. This was still an adjustment for all of us. The idea that Tommy would voluntarily spend time with a man who had unknowingly been his replacement. "How's Jake doing?" "Good, really good actually," he said. "Marcus is wonderful with him. And he's patient with me too. He lets me be part of things even though he doesn't have to." I set the plate of cookies on the table and sat down across from my son. "That must be complicated for you." Tommy was quiet for a moment, taking a cookie with the same careful movements he had used as a child. "It is. Some days I still wake up and think about what Jake might be doing, whether he needs anything. Then I remember that he's not..." He trailed off. "You're not his father," I said gently. "But you were. For a year, you were everything a father should be. That love wasn't wasted. It just got redirected. Is that what happened to you?" he asked, looking up at me with eyes that reminded me so much of his father's. "When Dad left, did your love for him just get redirected?" The question caught me off guard. We had never really talked about his father's abandonment. Not honestly. In a way, yes. All that love I would have given him, I poured into raising you instead. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly, "for how I treated you, for laughing when Samantha put you next to that garbage can, for pushing you away, for choosing her version of reality over yours." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "You fell in love, Tommy. People do foolish things when they're in love. Trust me, I know something about that. But you're my mother. I should have protected you, not participated in hurting you." "You were protecting what you thought was your family," I said. "I understand that feeling." He reached across the table and took my hand. "You saved me. You know, if you hadn't discovered the truth, how long would it have gone on? Would I have spent years raising another man's child, thinking he was mine?" I squeezed his hand. "I don't know, but I do know that Jake deserves to know his real father. And Marcus deserves to know his son. And you deserve to build your life on truth, not lies, even if the truth hurts. Especially then." We ate dinner in comfortable silence, the kind of easy quiet that I had forgotten we could share. Afterward, Tommy helped me clear the table and wash dishes, falling back into old rhythms as if the past year of distance had never happened. "I've been thinking about dating again," he said as we finished cleaning up. "Not seriously, not yet, but eventually." "That's healthy," I said, hanging up the dish towel. "You're young. You have so much to offer someone. This time I want to do things differently. Take it slower. Ask more questions. Maybe introduce them to my very smart mother who has good instincts about people." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "You're very smart, mother, who's also learned a thing or two about speaking up when something doesn't feel right." "Good," Tommy said, hugging me tight. I need someone who will tell me the truth, even when it's difficult to hear. After he left, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, thinking about the strange journey that had brought us here. 7 months ago, I had been the unwanted mother-in-law, sitting next to a garbage can, while my family laughed at my pain. Tonight, I was simply Tommy's mother again, trusted with his thoughts and feelings, valued for my perspective instead of dismissed for my inconvenience. The truth had been devastating in the short term. Marriages ended, families torn apart, an innocent baby caught in the middle of adult lies. But it had also been liberating. No more walking on eggshells, no more pretending that cruelty was humor, no more accepting treatment that made me feel worthless as a human being. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was a photo from Marcus, Jake taking confident steps across a playground while other children played nearby. The message that came with it was simple. Thought you'd like to see how steady he's getting on his feet. I smiled, studying the picture of the little boy who would never be my biological grandson, but who would always hold a special place in my heart. In the photo, Jake was laughing, his arms outstretched for balance, his face bright with the joy of newfound independence. He was learning to walk on his own, away from the lies and manipulations that had defined his early life. In a way, so was I. I texted back, "He looks happy and healthy. Thank you for including me." Marcus's response came quickly. "You're the one who made it possible for him to know his real family. We'll always be grateful for that. Real family. Not the family built on convenience and deception, but the messy, complicated, honest family that emerges when people choose truth over comfort." I set my phone aside and picked up the book I had been reading, settling deeper into my favorite chair. Tomorrow I would go to work at the grocery store, maybe call my friend Helen to catch up, perhaps visit the new bookstore I had been meaning to explore. Simple pleasures, but they were mine to choose now without having to worry about whether they would meet with someone else's approval. The truth had set us all free, even when, especially when, it had hurt. And for the first time in over a year, I was exactly where I belonged, in my own life, valued by people who saw my worth, surrounded by love that didn't require me to make myself smaller to receive it. Some victories don't come with fanfare or celebration. Sometimes the greatest triumph is simply the quiet satisfaction of knowing you chose courage over comfort, truth over convenience, and your own dignity over someone else's lies. That night, I slept better than I had in months,